The first time my grandson called another woman Grandma, I was standing 3 feet away holding his backpack. He didn't even look at me, no hesitation, just walked to her and said it like she'd earned it, like I hadn't raised him when no one else showed up. I didn't say a word, not that day, not yet, because I had something better than outrage. I had memory, and I was about to remind them all who I really am. I'm Margaret. I've been called a lot of things in my life. Nurse, mother, widow, helper. But the one title I never thought I'd have to fight for was Grandma. The first time I heard it, I thought I misheard. We were standing by the front door of my daughter's new house, her second husband's house, technically, waiting for the kids to gather their things. My grandson, Jamie, 8 years old and the kind of sensitive that makes you want to shield him from the whole world, turned to the woman behind me and said, "Bye, Grandma." His little hand waved in the air like he was sending off a balloon, but he wasn't waving at me. He was waving at her, Lydia, my daughter's new mother-in-law, a woman they had known for maybe 8 months, who showed up to birthday parties with store-bought cake and polished nails and called them my babies, like she'd earned it. I stood there holding Jamie's backpack, the one with the astronaut keychain I'd stitched on after it broke. My name hung in the air, unspoken, the word I'd heard hundreds, no thousands of times in crayon scribbles, whispered prayers, bedtime whimpers. Grandma, but not this time. Lydia smiled, all pearls and perfume, and kissed Jamie's head. "Be good, sweetheart," she said, slipping into the passenger seat of their luxury SUV without looking at me once. My granddaughter, Ella, followed close behind. "Bye, Grandma," she chirped, climbing in after her brother. Again, not to me. My arms suddenly felt too long, too empty. I clutched Jamie's backpack a little tighter. It smelled faintly like peanut butter and fabric softener. My eyes burned, but I didn't let it show. Not there. Not with my daughter and her perfect new life watching me from the porch. No one corrected the kids. No one said, "That's not Grandma. That's Nana. That's the woman who's been there since day one." Not even my daughter. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes tired in that way that always made me want to step in and fix things. Only this time, I didn't move. I just nodded once and said, "Drive safe." They did, and I stood on the curb, listening to the quiet hum of the tires fading down the street, and wondered when I became invisible. It's strange, really, how quickly erasure can happen. 1 year, you're the one holding their tiny hands in the pediatrician's office, whispering stories while they get their shots, baking dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets because Ella wouldn't eat anything else. And the next, you're standing like an afterthought while someone else wears your title like a borrowed coat. I didn't cry that day. I went back inside, made myself tea I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the little crayon drawing Jamie gave me last year. It was still pinned to my fridge. A lopsided house, 3 stick figures, the tallest labeled Mommy, the smallest me, and the one in the middle, Nana. Not anymore, apparently. I texted my daughter later that evening. Just something small. A question, really. "Hey, I noticed the kids calling Lydia Grandma today. Did something change?" She took 3 hours to reply. "They're just used to it now. It makes things simpler." Simpler. Like love could be edited down for convenience. Like the years I gave could be renamed, reorganized, reassigned, for symmetry, for ease. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew if I said it now, it would come out wrong, too sharp, too broken. And I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I wasn't going to be the bitter one, the difficult mother, the one who can't just get along. So I stayed quiet. But something in me changed that night. A silence that didn't feel like peace. More like a dam with a crack running through it. Something slow and cold and pressurized behind my ribs. And maybe they thought I'd let it go. That I'd swallow this, too. Like I always did. But I've learned something, living 64 years in this skin. The quiet ones, the ones you forget in the corner, We remember. We remember everything. And I was done being forgotten. That weekend, I set the dining table like I always do when the kids come over. Same placemats, same chipped teacups they like to fill with juice and pretend it's magic potion. I even made those little strawberry jam sandwiches Ella used to call sunshine pockets. They were coming for the weekend, just me and them, no parents, no Lydia, no fake grandma. At least that's what I told myself. When they arrived, it was like nothing had changed. Jamie dropped his backpack in the hallway like he always did, kicked off his sneakers with one foot and ran straight to the couch. Ella came in behind him with a wide smile and threw her arms around my waist. "Hi, Nana," she said. It should have made everything better. But the way she said it didn't sound like something she felt. It sounded like something she remembered she was supposed to say, like a habit that hadn't worn off yet. I kissed the top of her head and held her tighter than I probably should have. "I missed you, Ladybug." She shrugged. "We saw Grandma yesterday. She took us to that new pancake place." I didn't say a word. I just smiled. My lips didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. But inside, something dropped. Like the floor under me had shifted just enough to throw off my balance. When my daughter dropped them off, she didn't come in. Didn't even unbuckle her seatbelt, just rolled the window down and said, "Thanks again, Mom, they're excited." Excited. As if I was the babysitter, as if I hadn't been the one rocking Jamie to sleep when she went back to work, as if I hadn't fed Ella mashed bananas off my pinky when she wouldn't take the spoon, as if Lydia hadn't just breezed in, handed out pancakes and pearls and taken my place. I stood in the living room, watching the car disappear down the road again. For a moment, I imagined walking up to her window, knocking gently, and asking one small thing. "Why didn't you stop them?" But I didn't. I let the car disappear. I closed the door. And I walked back to my grandchildren like I always had, carrying the weight of their world in a heart that no one ever seemed to notice had cracks. We played games. We read books. I watched them fall asleep in the same room they always slept in, under the same glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling 5 years ago. I tucked them in, kissed their cheeks, and stood in the doorway just watching them breathe. And still, something didn't sit right. Later that night, I opened my laptop. I scrolled through old photos, ones I hadn't looked at in a long time. Ella in the bathtub at 9 months, blowing bubbles through her lips. Jamie at 2, trying to pet a squirrel at the park with a Cheerio in his hand. Photos of birthday parties I planned, costumes I sewed, science projects I stayed up helping with. Me, always there. Sometimes with frosting on my cheek or my hair a mess from rushing, but always smiling and always there. There was one picture that made my breath catch. It was from the hospital when Jamie was born. I'm holding him. My daughter's asleep in the bed behind me. I remember that moment like it was a tattoo burned into my skin. The nurse had handed him to me because my daughter was too tired. She said, "Here, Grandma. He needs someone steady." Someone steady. I stared at that picture a long time, and then I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it For Them. Because maybe they were too young to remember. Maybe their parents weren't going to remind them, but I would. I was done hoping someone else would honor what I'd done. I would build the monument myself, not out of revenge, not out of spite, but out of memory. Because love isn't just presence, it's proof, and I had plenty of that. The next morning started the way most mornings with them do, slow, sweet, sleepy. Jamie padded into the kitchen in his socks, hair sticking up, rubbing his eyes. Ella followed behind him holding her stuffed flamingo, the one I'd bought her from a street fair 3 years ago after she fell and scraped her knee and needed something pink to make the tears stop. They asked for pancakes, so I made them, with chocolate chips, the way they like. Jamie sat at the counter swinging his feet while Ella sprinkled cinnamon on her plate like fairy dust. It should have been a perfect morning. One of those quiet moments where everything feels right even if the world outside is tilting. but something about the way they looked at me like I was familiar but not central sat heavy in my gut. Jamie was mid-bite when he asked, "Are we seeing Grandma today?" I paused, my hand frozen over the pan. "Who?" I asked, even though I knew. "Grandma Lydia," he said. "Daddy said we're going to her house tomorrow." Not Grandma Nana, not Nana, not my name, just hers. I forced a smile. That sounds nice. But inside, the silence rang like a scream. When they went to play in the backyard, I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out my phone. My thumbs hovered over the screen for a long time before I finally typed it. "I need to ask, why are they calling her Grandma and not me? Did you tell them to?" I stared at it, then hit send. It took her 5 minutes to respond, quicker than before. Maybe she knew this wasn't going away. "They just picked it up. Lydia spends time with them. It's easier not to correct them. We didn't want to confuse them." That word again. Easier. Simpler. Less confusing. Simpler for who? Because I wasn't confused? I was erased. I typed again. "So you told them I'm not Grandma anymore?" Read. No reply. I stared out the window at Jamie pushing Ella on the old swing. That swing set had been Daniel's once. My daughter's first husband, their father, long gone now. I'd kept it even when the bolts rusted and the paint peeled. I'd reinforced it myself because they loved it, because they mattered, because I was trying to hold together a history no one else seemed to care about. 30 minutes passed before she replied. "I didn't say that. I just think it's fine if they have more than one. Lydia's part of their life now. This isn't a competition." Competition. As if love were a prize, as if I were some needy contestant waving my arms, begging to be remembered. I felt the tightness crawl up my chest, that slow, aching kind that doesn't make you cry, but makes your teeth grind, your shoulders tense, your whole body bristle with the weight of you don't matter anymore. I didn't respond, because anything I said now would be twisted, labeled dramatic, emotional, hard to deal with. It's amazing, really, how often women get labeled too much after a lifetime of giving everything. They ask you to babysit, to pick up the pieces, to help, to show up. And when you ask for even an ounce of recognition, you're accused of needing validation. So I sat there. In the house, I'd worked 2 jobs to buy. At the table that had hosted every birthday, every scraped knee, every late-night hot chocolate when someone had a nightmare. I looked at the wall, at the faded family photos I hadn't updated in years, and something in me just settled. Not broke, not shattered, settled, like a coin sinking to the bottom of a jar, quiet, final. I opened that folder on my laptop again, for them. This time, I added more. Photos of the time I made a full dinosaur cake for Jamie's 4th birthday, even though I burned the first one and stayed up until 2 a.m. to remake it. A picture of Ella in the rain, jumping puddles in the yellow boots I bought her after her dad forgot to pick her up from school. Videos of us singing together in the car, messy, out of tune, and perfect. Proof, undeniable, irreplaceable, mine. That night, while they were sleeping, I packed a small bag. I pulled out an old scrapbook from the cabinet, bought disposable cameras from the drugstore. I wrote a note and folded it into an envelope. To Jamie and Ella, so you always remember. Because I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who decided my worth was optional, but I was going to show them. This wouldn't be a weekend they forget. It would be the one they remember forever. The next morning, I didn't let the heaviness settle. I beat it to the punch. I was up before sunrise, already in the kitchen before the coffee pot finished brewing. I stood by the window with my robe tied tight, watching the pale light break over the fence line, and I made a decision. Not loud, not dramatic, but the kind of decision that settles deep in your bones, the kind you don't back away from. I was going to remind my grandchildren who raised them when it wasn't easy, who was there when no one else was, not with speeches, not with guilt, with proof, with presence. By the time Jamie and Ella woke up, the house smelled like cinnamon and apples. I made muffins from scratch, not the boxed kind, the real ones, with brown sugar crumbles on top the way Jamie liked, and extra cinnamon in the batter because Ella once said it tasted like Christmas. They ate in their pajamas, feet swinging, faces sticky, giggling between bites. After breakfast, I handed them each a small gift bag. Inside, a disposable camera and a blank mini scrapbook. Jamie held his up. "What's this for?" I smiled. "We're making something this weekend. Something just for us. You're gonna help me build a book of memories." Ella aplaudió con las manos. "Like a treasure hunt?" "Exactly," I said. "A memory hunt." And just like that, we had a mission. We spent the day moving through the past like it was a living thing. First stop, the old library downtown. The same one I took them to for story time when they were barely big enough to carry their own books. Jamie ran to the same corner he used to curl up in. Ella asked if the turtle mural on the wall was still there. It was. They took photos of books, of each other, of the librarian who still remembered them and said, "Well, look who's back." Then we went to the park. Not the new fancy one with the plastic slides and Bluetooth speakers, but the old one with the squeaky swing set and the merry-go-round that still turned with a hard enough push. "Remember when I scraped my knee here?" Jamie asked, pointing to a tree near the path. I did. He was 4. He'd tripped running toward a squirrel and cried so hard I thought he broke something. I kissed his knee and gave him a popsicle from the cooler in my trunk. He stopped crying 5 seconds later. "I still have that scar," he said, and I smiled. "That's because you're a warrior," I told him. Ella took pictures of the swings, the clouds, the little duck pond. They didn't realize it, but they were building something, anchoring their memories, tying themselves back to the places that raised them. To me. After lunch, we went home and I pulled out old photo albums. I let them flip through page after page. Halloween costumes I stitched myself, pillow forts in my living room, a photo of Jamie asleep on my chest when he was just days old, one of Ella in a princess dress and rain boots. I'd let her wear it to the grocery store that day because she said, "Real princesses don't wait for permission." Jamie squinted at a picture. "Is that me at the zoo?" "Your first time," I said. "You fed the giraffe and then tried to follow it home." He laughed, then paused. "You remember everything." "I do," I said, because I never wanted to forget. Later, while they were coloring at the table, I overheard Ella say something that made me stop in my tracks. She turned to Jamie and whispered, "I like Nana's house better. It smells like us." Not like her. Like us. I walked out of the room before they could see the tears welling in my eyes. That night, we had dinner in the backyard under the string lights I'd hung up 3 summers ago when we tried to recreate a camping trip. I made mac and cheese from scratch, and we toasted with grape juice in plastic cups. Jamie proposed a toast. "To Nana," he said, "for knowing how to do everything." Ella added, "And for the best hugs." I didn't say a word. I just held up my cup and drank. After they went to bed, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my legs, camera in my lap, and thought about how memory isn't just a feeling. It's a muscle. You use it or you lose it. And I was done letting mine go limp. They could teach those kids to call someone else grandma all they wanted, but they'd never be able to erase what we built here. Not unless I let them, and I never would. Sunday morning crept in quiet and gray, like it knew the silence in the house was heavier than usual, the kind of morning where the walls feel too still, like even the dust is holding its breath. Jamie and Ella were still asleep, sprawled across the guest bed like little tangled tornadoes of elbows and blankets. I stood in the doorway for a while, just watching them, memorizing the curve of Jamie's foot hanging off the side, the way Ella always kicked the covers down halfway through the night and curled her knees up like she was still in the womb. I'd seen them sleep like this more nights than I could count. Fevers, stomach bugs, nightmares. Their parents would call me in a panic, always last minute, always breathless, always assuming I'd say yes, and I always did, no matter what I was doing, no matter how tired I was. Because when you love someone like that, your body learns how to carry more than it should. You stretch and stretch and stretch, until one day you realize no one asked how far you'd bent. I tiptoed into the kitchen and started breakfast, quietly, the way I always do. I cracked eggs, sliced strawberries, warmed the syrup on the stove instead of the microwave, because Ella says the bottle feels cold and sad otherwise. I made the pancakes in dinosaur shapes for Jamie, added cinnamon just to the edge of the batter for that warm bite they like. These are the things only I know, the invisible things, the things you don't put in photo albums or post about online, but they stitch the whole relationship together. By the time the kids stumbled out, still half dreaming, the table was set, juice poured, napkins folded into hearts. Jamie rubbed his eyes and said, "It smells like Sunday." Ella se sentó y me miró arriba. "Can I have extra syrup, please?" I nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. Always." We didn't talk much while we ate, just soft chewing, sleepy smiles, and the kind of warmth that comes from a history you can't fake. But beneath the comfort, something simmered, a quiet ticking in my chest, like a reminder that time was almost up. They'd be going home soon, back to her house, back to him, back to her. And no matter how many muffins I baked or swings I pushed or knees I kissed, they were slowly being taught to forget me, to replace me, to call someone else Grandma. When I zipped up their overnight bags later, I slipped their little memory books into the side pocket. Each one had a sticky note on the front in my handwriting. "Finish this whenever you miss me." I'd packed their disposable cameras in plastic baggies and added 2 extra rolls of film each, even though I knew their parents wouldn't bother to get them developed. Still, I hoped. Before they left, I pulled out the small folded notes I'd written the night before. One for each of them. Jamie's said, "The first time you opened your eyes, I was there. I've been there every time since. Love, Nana." Ella's said, "No matter what name they call me, I'll always be yours. Love, Nana." I tucked them into their backpacks when they weren't looking. When my daughter pulled into the driveway, she didn't even turn off the engine. She waved from the window like she was picking up dry cleaning, Bluetooth in her ear, hair done just enough to look effortless. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't want to talk. The message was clear. This was a transaction. Jamie and Ella came running out and gave me those quick, distracted hugs kids give when they're already looking toward the next thing. Jamie still smelled like syrup. Ella's hair was messy on one side. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't. "Thanks for the weekend," Jamie said, already climbing into the car. "Yeah, thanks," Ella added. I smiled. "Did you have fun?" "Uh-huh," they answered together, already gone. That's when my daughter finally spoke. Just one sentence. They had a good time. No eye contact, no thank you. No, "You're amazing." Just those 4 words, dry, dismissive, final. And then the window rolled up. I watched them drive away, and I didn't wave this time. I stood there, arms crossed, the morning wind curling around my ankles like it was trying to keep me upright. That was the moment it changed. It didn't hurt, not the way it had before. This time, it solidified, like concrete in my chest, like something that had finally decided to stop trying to be soft for people who never deserved it. I went back inside, wiped the syrup off the table, put the dishes in the sink, and sat down with my coffee. Then I opened my laptop, and there it was, like fate had pulled it out of thin air. An email from the school. Family Heritage Day, volunteers needed. I clicked without hesitation, signed up, wrote my name in the form field with full intention. Margaret Langley, grandmother, volunteer. I stared at those 3 lines for a long time because they weren't just information. They were a declaration. You may forget me, but I haven't forgotten who I am. I spent the rest of that afternoon pulling out bins from the garage. old ones I hadn't touched in years. Inside them, Jamie's baby blanket, Ella's first pair of glitter shoes, pictures they drew of us together. One where I was a superhero with a spatula for a sword. I found every handwritten note they ever gave me, every macaroni necklace, every wrinkled Happy Nana Day card in rainbow marker. I laid it all out on the table like evidence in a courtroom, because that's what it was, proof, not just of what I'd done, but of who I was to them. And I would remind them, not with guilt, not with tears, not with speeches, with legacy. Let them call someone else Grandma if they wanted, but when they closed their eyes at night, when they smelled cinnamon in the air, when they saw a swing set or a glue stick or a worn-out teddy bear, they'd remember me, because I never left. Family Heritage Day came the following Thursday. The sky was overcast, like even the weather was holding its breath. I stood outside the school doors, gripping my tote bag with both hands, full of items most people would have tossed years ago. I watched the line of parents weaving in, arms full of trifold boards and glittered timelines, dressed to be seen. I almost turned around. Almost. Because there's something especially cruel about walking into a space where no one's expecting you, even though you were the one who showed up every single time before. But then I thought about Ella's voice that morning on the phone, how she whispered, "I hope you come, Nana," like she wasn't sure I would, and Jamie, who said, "I want to show you my classroom." So I walked in. The cafeteria had been transformed. Folding tables lined the room, each assigned to a student, each covered in family trees, photos, artifacts. I saw everything from Viking helmets to faux passports to one dad who wore lederhosen and handed out bratwurst like it was Oktoberfest. Some parents were milling around, wine cup coffees in hand, smiling for photos. Others had dropped things off and left, their obligation complete. I found Ella and Jamie's table near the back. Their names were printed in Sharpie on paper tents. But the table itself, empty. No board, no family tree, no framed photos, just a stack of construction paper and a bottle of glue that had already crusted over at the cap. I blinked. My daughter hadn't shown up. Their father hadn't either. And Lydia, no sign of her. I stood there in that fluorescent-lit cafeteria, tote bag still in hand, and felt it rise in my chest. Not shame, not sadness. A deep, searing anger. Not the hot kind that burns fast and disappears. Number, the kind that starts in your gut and settles into your spine. The kind that remembers. I slowly unpacked my things, one by one. Amy's baby shoes, worn down at the toes from the way he dragged his feet. Ella's paper crown from her 3rd birthday, still speckled with frosting from the day she refused to take it off even during her nap. I set down a printed photo of the 3 of us at the beach, me kneeling between them, one arm around each, sunburned and laughing, sand everywhere. Then I pulled out their memory books from the weekend before, the disposable cameras, the pages we'd filled with drawings and glue-stuck leaves and little notes written in crooked, child handwriting. Nana makes the best muffins. Nana always lets me win Uno but pretends I earned it. Nana is magic. I laid it all out like a shrine. No decoration, no flashing lights, just truth. Raw, undeniable, visible. A teacher passed behind me and stopped. "Oh," she said, pausing mid-step, "this is beautiful." I nodded, kept my eyes on the table. "Thank you." "They did this with you?" "Yes," I said. "They always do." As students began to trickle in with their classes, I stepped back and let the display speak for itself. I watched from the corner as Jamie walked into the room and froze. His eyes locked on the table, on the little objects that made up his whole childhood. He didn't smile right away. He just stared. Then he turned and looked straight at me. He didn't say a word, just walked across the room, right through the crowd, and wrapped his arms around my waist. Not the kind of hug you give out of obligation, the kind that anchors you. Ella wasn't far behind. She squealed when she saw the paper crown and ran to put it on. "This is all ours," she said, eyes wide. "You brought it?" I bent down. "Only the important parts." That afternoon, the entire class rotated through the displays. I stood quietly near the back while the teacher read aloud snippets from each table. When she got to Jamie and Ella's, she paused. Then she read one of the notes. "My Nana has known me forever. Before I could walk, she was there. I don't remember not loving her." No one said anything for a moment. Then the teacher looked up and smiled at me. "Would you like to say anything, Margaret?" I felt the room tilt toward me. Dozens of faces. My knees trembled, but my voice didn't. "I don't need to," I said, and I didn't, because it was all there, on that table, in their faces, in the tightness of Jamie's hug and the way Ella held my hand like a lifeline. Not a single person asked, "Where's the other grandmother?" No one noticed Lydia wasn't there, because I was. Because I had always been. And sometimes presence is louder than anything money or makeup or last names can provide. I didn't need to take my title back. They'd already returned it to me without realizing it. They remembered. And that was the beginning of everything changing. It didn't take long for the storm to start. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls and a text from my daughter. "Saw the photos from school. Could have told me you were going." No greeting, no warmth, just a warning shot. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "You didn't tell me you weren't going." I put my phone down after that. I didn't need to read whatever came next, because I knew the pattern by now. Make me the problem. Frame my presence as provocation. Call my love dramatic because it doesn't match their detached convenience. But I had reached a point in my life where I would no longer explain myself for showing up, especially when others had stopped bothering. That afternoon, Jamie called me on his own. Not a FaceTime his mom forced, not a thank you prompt, just him. "Can we do another scrapbook next time?" he asked. My friends liked mine the best. I smiled. "Of course, sweetheart, we can start one for every season if you want." He paused, then said, "I told Mrs. Langley you're my real grandma." I blinked. "Mrs. Langley?" "My teacher," he said casually. "She asked who brought all the stuff, and I said, that's my real grandma, the one who raised me." It was the first time I'd heard anyone say it out loud, the one who raised me. I hung up the phone and let that sentence echo in the quiet of my kitchen, not because I needed validation, but because for so long I'd carried the weight of being invisible, smiling through sidelining, swallowing my voice just to keep the peace. And now? That sentence was a crack in the dam, a light breaking through the fog. That same evening, my daughter showed up at my house unannounced. She knocked once, then twice, then opened the door like she always had, like the locks didn't mean much between us. She walked in with that stiff posture she wears when she's holding in an argument she hasn't figured out how to deliver. "I just think you could have said something," she started. "You didn't have to make a scene." I turned slowly. What scene did I make? She gestured vaguely toward the air, like proof was hanging from the ceiling. All those pictures, the baby shoes. It was just a lot. "A lot of truth?" I asked. "A lot of history," she snapped. I crossed my arms. "Exactly." We stood there in that silence that only mothers and daughters understand, where every word has 3 meanings, and the heaviest things are always the ones that never get spoken. "You're making this about you," she finally said, quieter now. "I'm not," I said, "but I am done pretending it wasn't always me." She blinked, and I watched something shift behind her eyes, not anger, not even shame, just a dawning realization that maybe she'd rewritten the story so many times she forgot who wrote the first chapters. I walked to the hallway and came back holding a photo. It was her in the hospital bed cradling Jamie, eyes exhausted. I was in the corner of the frame, blurry but unmistakably there, holding her hand, the only one in the room. "Do you even remember who took this?" I asked. She looked down at it. "No, I do," I said, "because I took all the pictures, because I was always there." She sat down at the kitchen table, the bravado drained. She looked smaller suddenly, not weak, just real, the way daughters rarely allow themselves to be in front of their mothers. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. I sat across from her. "But it did." She nodded, eyes wet. "I thought Lydia would make things easier. She buys them stuff. She helps with school drop-off when we're busy. I thought if I gave them both grandmas, I could finally stop being the bridge between everything." "You weren't the bridge," I said gently. "You were the wall." And there it was, the truth laid bare, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. She wiped under her eyes. "They love you, you know," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but love without acknowledgement is just a favor, and I'm not a favor. I'm their grandmother." She nodded again. "You're right." And for once, there was no but, no excuse, no redirection, just that. "You're right." She stood to leave and paused at the door. I saw Ella wearing that crown again last night. She wouldn't take it off. She told me it was from the day she remembered forever. I smiled. "She's got a good memory," I said. As the door shut behind her, I let the quiet return. Not hollow this time, not tense, just full. I stood at the window, the same one where I used to watch Jamie run through the sprinkler and Ella pick dandelions like she was harvesting gold. The swing in the backyard swayed gently in the wind. They tried to write me out of the story, but the story was mine. I had lived every chapter, and I wasn't going to be footnoted anymore. The following week passed slowly, like the world was exhaling after something cracked open. Nothing dramatic happened. No new fights, no surprise visits, no accusations disguised as conversations. But everything felt different. Not on the surface. On the surface, it looked the same. The same morning routines, the same quiet coffee, the same mail on the porch. But something had shifted inside me. Something I couldn't name at first. It was like finding a bruise you didn't know was there and realizing it no longer hurt when you pressed on it. That Friday evening, there was a knock on my door. Not my daughter, not her husband. Jamie and Ella, alone. I opened the door and they both stood there, slightly out of breath, cheeks red from the walk up the driveway. Ella had her backpack on backwards and Jamie was holding something behind his back. "Mom dropped us off," Jamie said. "We asked her to." I blinked. "You asked?" He nodded. "We wanted to see you, for real, just us." Before I could say anything, he pulled the thing out from behind his back. A new scrapbook, the cover said. "Nana's House, the Best Days." In marker, crooked and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. They walked past me like they lived here again, like nothing had changed, like they belonged. And maybe they did. They sat at the kitchen table, pulling out glue sticks and photos, scribbling captions. They showed me a drawing Jamie had made. Me in the kitchen, wearing my apron, holding a plate of pancakes as big as my head. Ella had drawn our backyard, complete with the crooked bird feeder and the tire swing Daniel had put up when she was still in diapers. "This is our favorite place," she said. I sat down next to them, watching their hands work, messy and determined. Jamie looked up and said, "Can we sleep over tomorrow night?" "Of course," I whispered. Then he asked, "Do you still have the star stickers?" I stood up and went straight to the drawer by the fridge, pulled out the old blue tin where I'd kept them since he was 3. They were still there, gold and silver, slightly curled at the edges. He grinned. "Yes." He took one, peeled it carefully, and placed it on the corner of the scrapbook page. "Best Nana," he said. That's what it means." I watched them for a long time that night. Not just their faces, but their movements, their joy. I watched them build something out of paper and glue and unshaken memory, something no one could take from them. They didn't ask for screen time. They didn't mention Lydia, They didn't need to. Because the woman who raised them, who bandaged their knees and baked their cookies and folded their socks into heart shapes, they remembered her. Not through titles, through moments. Before they left, Jamie hugged me hard, arms around my neck, his voice soft in my ear. "Do you think we can do this every week? Make memory books?" Ella added, "I want to make one for Christmas and Halloween and one for my next dance recital." My throat burned, but I didn't cry. I just nodded. "We can make as many as you want." When their mom came to pick them up, she stood at the porch and waited. No rush, no phone in her hand this time. She didn't step inside, but she didn't look annoyed either, just thoughtful. "I'll bring them again next week," she said. I nodded. "I'd like that." And she paused, just for a moment, and added, "I think they need this." More than I realized. Then they were gone, and I stood in the doorway holding that crooked scrapbook to my chest like a sacred thing, because that's what it was. Not proof of who I'd been, proof that I was still here. That night, I sat in bed with a cup of tea and flipped through the scrapbook slowly. There were already chocolate fingerprints on the corners, crayon marks where someone had drawn outside the lines. In the middle, in Jamie's handwriting, it said, "Some people give hugs, Nana gives homes." I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was sad, because I didn't want to miss a second of remembering what it feels like to be seen again. They may have tried to rewrite the narrative, but the ones who lived the story with me, they knew the truth, and they were starting to tell it. The invitation came on a Tuesday afternoon, a text message, no warmth, no emojis, not even a name, just Ella's spring concert, 6 p.m. Thursday. Auditorium doors open at 5:30. Lydia's. No hi. No hope you can make it. Just instructions, like she was doing her due diligence to include me in something she had already claimed. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking my phone without replying. I didn't need to answer. I already knew I'd be there. Because this wasn't about her. It never had been. This was about Ella. And Ella loved to sing. She always had, since she was 2 years old and belted off-key lullabies into a plastic microphone. She used to sing while brushing her teeth, sing while putting on her socks, sing in the bath until her fingers wrinkled like dried figs. Her voice had always been part of my background noise, like the creak of the floorboard outside the kitchen, like the kettle boiling on the stove, like home. So on Thursday, I put on my soft blue cardigan, the one she once said made me look like a sky, and left 20 minutes earlier than I needed to. I wanted a good seat. I pulled into the school parking lot and found it already filling up. Parents hustled in with camera bags, little siblings trailing behind them in jelly sandals and jelly-stained shirts. Inside the auditorium, the air was buzzing. Folding chairs lined every row, already half full. I walked up to the sign-in table and smiled at the volunteer. "I'm Ella's grandmother," I said softly. She looked up, then glanced at the sign-in sheet. "Are you Lydia?" I didn't blink. "No," I said. "I'm the other one." She paused, then smiled. "Welcome." I found my seat on the aisle, second row from the front. Good view. Not too close, but close enough that she'd see me. I was settling in when I saw them walk in, my daughter, her husband, and Lydia. She was dressed in pastel pink and pearls, the kind of outfit meant for photographs, not comfort. She clutched a gift bag with tissue paper exploding from the top like a bouquet, and walked with the presence of someone who expected eyes to follow her. They didn't notice me at first. They sat 3 rows behind, center, prime real estate. Lydia looked around, lips pursed like she was calculating her importance based on who looked back. But Ella didn't look at her when she walked onto that stage. She looked at me. She scanned the crowd with those wide brown eyes, eyes that had once cried for me in the middle of the night when she had growing pains, and when she found me, she smiled. Big, unmistakable, beaming. She waved, right in the middle of the audience before the lights dimmed. She waved at me. I waved back, heart pounding, and Lydia saw it. She looked at Ella, then at me. Her smile faltered. She didn't wave. She straightened her dress. The performance began. Ella was in the second row of kids, right next to a boy who kept sneezing. And she sang every note, loud, proud, off-key, but fearless. Jamie leaned over from the row behind me and whispered, "She practiced every night in the bathroom, drove us all crazy." I laughed quietly. She sounds perfect. When it ended, the applause filled the room like thunder. Parents surged toward the stage with flowers and cameras. I waited. Let the storm pass. Let the others run. Ella me vio todavía sentado y vino directamente a mí. She climbed off the stage, crown of construction paper still tilted on her head, and walked right into my arms. "I saw you," she whispered. "I was looking the whole time." "I know," I said. "I was looking too." She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was a drawing, crayon on notebook paper. Stick figures, her in the middle, one adult on each side. One said Mom, the other said Nana. "No, Lydia." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. A few minutes later, we crossed paths near the auditorium door. Lydia stood with my daughter, smile stretched too wide, gift bag still unopened in her hand. She looked at Ella, then at me. She tried to smile, tried to wave. I nodded politely but didn't stop walking, because I didn't owe her anything. Not permission, not space, not forgiveness. She had tried to fill a role, a title, a word, but she had never lived the moments that gave it meaning, and now the kids knew the difference. I didn't win them back. I had never lost them. She had only borrowed something that was never hers to begin with. The following Saturday, I woke up before sunrise, the way I always do when something good is coming. Not a holiday, not a wedding, just mine. I made coffee in silence. Let it steep slowly, filling the kitchen with warmth. The birds hadn't started yet. The street was still asleep. But I was wide awake, because today I wasn't waiting to be invited anywhere. I was the one setting the table. I had planned this weeks ago, quietly, steadily, with no announcement, no permission, a backyard dinner, a long table under the string lights, the ones Jamie helped me hang last summer, mismatched chairs, real napkins, the kind of evening that didn't need a reason to happen. I called it memory night. Just family, the real kind. I made the invitation myself, handwritten, mailed in envelopes with stamps. No group texts, no emojis, just paper and pen and names written with love. I invited Jamie and Ella, of course. I invited my sister Carol and her wife Joan, who once drove an hour just to fix my leaky faucet. I invited Claire, my oldest friend from the ER, who brought me soup after my hip surgery and didn't ask for anything in return. I even invited Mr. and Mrs. Patel from next door, the ones who always wave, always ask how I'm doing, and once left warm naan bread at my door just because it smelled good. These weren't obligations. They were witnesses to my life, to who I was, to what I had given, built, and become. By 5 p.m., the backyard smelled like lemon zest and roasted garlic. I'd made 2 pasta dishes, one with cheese, one without, for Ella's sensitive tummy. I baked my apple crumble from scratch, the one Jamie always called crispy magic. The table was beautiful, not expensive, just true. Sunflowers in jars, candles flickering in jars of old honey, real plates, ice water in glass pitchers, not plastic bottles. By 6, everyone had arrived. Jamie and Ella ran through the yard like it was their own. Claire brought a bottle of wine and 3 stories. Carol told the same joke she always tells, and we all laughed anyway. And I sat at the center of it. Not in the kitchen, not behind the scenes, not left off the program, at the head of my own damn table. Ella se acurrucó a mi lado con su plato y se inclinó en mi hombro. "Did you make all this?" I smiled. "Every bite." She looked around. "This is the best party ever." I didn't correct her. It wasn't a party. It was a reclamation. Midway through dinner, Jamie stood and tapped his fork on his glass like he'd seen at weddings. Everyone turned. He cleared his throat like he meant business. "I want to make a toast." We all smiled, leaned in. He lifted his grape juice in one hand and pointed to me with the other. "To Nana," he said, "for remembering everything, and for making sure we remember too." The table went quiet. I felt tears gather behind my eyes but held them. Then Ella stood up beside him. "To Nana," she echoed, because she never forgot us, even when other people tried to make her small. My daughter wasn't there. Lydia wasn't either. And yet I had never felt fuller. I raised my glass. My hands didn't tremble. "To the ones who stay," I said, even when they're asked to sit in the corner. The glasses clinked, and no one ever took their eyes off me again. Later that night, after the table was cleared and the stars came out in their usual silence, I sat on the porch alone, just me and the breeze. I didn't check my phone, didn't scroll, didn't wonder if anyone was talking about me, because I didn't need noise anymore. I had peace, and the proof that all those years I poured into everyone else hadn't disappeared. They had roots, roots that remembered, roots that returned. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly who I was. Not the woman erased from the story, not the placeholder in someone else's vision, not the helper, not the extra, the main character, the keeper of the memories, the one they'd never forget again. I woke up the next morning to birdsong and the kind of light that doesn't rush you. It drifted in slow through the curtains, warm and soft across the hardwood floor, as if even the sun had learned to knock before entering now. I stayed in bed for a while, not because I was tired, because I could. There was no one to impress, no one to cook for, no one expecting me to disappear into a role they didn't even respect. The house was still, not empty, just quiet in a way that finally felt earned. I got up and wrapped myself in my robe. My knees creaked. My shoulder ached from where Ella had fallen asleep, leaning into me during dessert. I smiled at the soreness. It felt honest, like proof of being used, not discarded. I padded into the kitchen. The candle from last night still smelled faintly of orange and rosemary. There were a few wine glasses in the sink, a cloth napkin on the floor, a glitter star sticker stuck to the fridge that I hadn't noticed before. I didn't clean anything right away. I just stood there and took it in. This mess wasn't neglect. It was Joy's footprint. The front porch held more signs of what I'd built. A thank you card in crayon, a leftover paper crown, a handwritten note from Claire, folded and left by the door. "You've always been the one, Margaret. They just finally caught up to you." I tucked it in the drawer with my measuring spoons and let it sit there like a secret ingredient. By noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Jamie. "Can we come back next weekend?" I smiled. Always. And I meant it, not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because I had nothing left to beg for. No more asking to be seen, no more trying to fit into places that shrank me, no more shrinking. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the sky go from blue to purple to almost black. I listened to the wind rustle through the garden, my garden, the one I planted year after year with hands that knew how to grow things even in bad soil. Behind me, the house stood firm, lived in, softened, holding every trace of a woman who stayed when she wasn't thanked, who gave when she wasn't noticed, who never once dropped the thread. They called someone else Grandma. But when it mattered, when truth was louder than titles, they knew where to return. Not to the pearls, not to the pink blouses and the gift bags, but to me, the one who never left, the one who showed up every single time. And this time, I didn't just show up for them, I showed up for me. For the version of myself I'd buried under guilt and quiet servitude. For the woman who had stood in kitchens and auditoriums and driveways waiting to be remembered. And now, I wasn't waiting anymore, because I was remembered. Not in gold frames, but in crayon, in crooked scrapbooks, in muffins and dinosaur pancakes, in little arms that wrapped around me without shame, in the words, "Can we come back?" That's the thing about real love. It remembers, even when others forget, even when it's taught to forget, even when it's renamed. Real love comes home. And now, so had I. Final line, voiceover. You don't have to fight for a place at the table when you built the house. You just sit and let them remember.